Today I'm going to tell you why this game might just be the right one for you. Welcome back, YouTube. Today we're going to be discussing Lion and Dragon, which is a OSR game written by the RPGPundit. Before we get into that, if you could, go ahead and like this video, and if you want to see more of this type of content, go ahead and subscribe. It would mean a great deal to me, and I thank you. So Lion and Dragon is a complete, I would call it a D&D competitor. It's an OSR role-playing game. OSR stands for Old School Renaissance, for those of you that don't know. It's a movement that came probably about 15 years ago. Basically just a shift in philosophy towards more traditional D&D style. Don't think too much, go into a dungeon, kill things, get treasure, spend it, have fun. Nothing wrong with that. Lion and Dragon, even though it's OSR, you shouldn't have any flashbacks, any of you 2E or 1E D&D players of like Thacos or Matrixes to determine if you hit something. This is actually based on the OGL, the third edition of D&D's OGL, which just kind of essentially is a framework, a spine to hang the rules on. It certainly does have an old school feel to it. This is a very low magic setting, which can be very good in certain situations. If you have, for instance, we run Birthright. This would fit right into Birthright. If you're running a Game of Thrones style game, this would work in that. And I have one killer application for this game, but you got to stick around to the end for it, and you're going to want to because it's really good. So what do you get in this game? Well, you have the familiar stats: strength, dexterity, constitution, charisma, wisdom. You have classes which are familiar, but there's a few new ones. You have your clerics, you have fighters, you have magisters, which are the wizards. And as I said, wizardry in this game is really, really historical, historical based, I should say. It's based a lot on summoning magic. It's not something you would just dally in. This is as far from Monty Cook style twinkery as you can get. You also have, as classes, which I thought was kind of amusing, you have the Kimry, Scotsman. This is obviously heavily based on Britain, but the inclusion of them as classes kind of reminded me of the old D&D box set where, if you were an elf, that was your class, or if you were a dwarf, that was your class. So I kind of dug it, actually. I mentioned the magic. This is stuff that's very powerful and very corrupting. There's a lot of pages devoted to alchemy. This is a extremely well-researched book. When you get into the combat system, any D&D player is going to find this very familiar. You're rolling a die 20 and adding something to it, and you are beating a target. Usually your opponent's armor class. As I said, it's based on the OGL license, and it seems to have been built to be able to kind of bolt on certain things. There's no given skill list in the game. I think it's kind of up to you to determine, what you think is important. That can be good or bad, depending on how much effort, you're looking to put into things. There's a section at the end, in one of the appendices, where he gives you a lot of monsters, your traditional fantasy monsters, and also some NPCs that you might end up fighting. Again, this is perfect for the type of game that this, kind of emulates. This is not high fantasy. So, you're not going to get, several hundred monsters. Mainly it's probably going to be assumed you're fighting other men or women, with the occasional monster thrown in. The artwork in the game relies heavily on public domain artwork, and also I think there's a few original pieces thrown in there as well. I was actually impressed. I was expecting the worst, but if these are public domain, he chose very well. It really does fit the theme of the book. This kind of historical Britain role-playing. I know Pundit sells a setting for this, I believe called Dark Albion, which is kind of a War of the Roses type setting, which seems rather cool. I did not get that. I got the sci-fi add-on to this. There's a science fiction source book that you can use these general rules for, and then just kind of adapted to sci-fi. I've not gone through that completely yet, though. So is this game for you? Well, if you run a very low magic game, even if it's not historical, I would actually look into this. It's pretty good. I was impressed the amount of historical research, especially, like with the summoning and the alchemy. And the combat, I'm telling you, the combat is a breeze. If your players are concerned about switching, they will find a lot of this very familiar, because any edition past 3rd edition, this blends well with. Now, if you run, a high fantasy setting, where it's expected that there's going to be a lot of magic, it's probably not going to be one that's going to be for you. You may want to pass on it, but I tell you what, you could still buy it just for some of the historical stuff in here. Some of the summoning magic and the alchemy is well worth it. Do I have any complaints? Not really. One thing I'd love to see in any book, even a small press one like this, is just a 1-page, summary of some of the key rules. Hey, what's a prayer check again? Oh, let's go here. Boom. It's this plus this, plus this. That's minor, though. I mean, you can always make your own, and of course, jot it down on character sheets as you will. So I promised you one use for Lion and Dragon, even if you can't use it in your D&D game. Let's say you have a side game, or you're looking for a side game to run. You still want to keep kind of to a fantasy theme. There is an old game which is much beloved. It is called Pendragon. A great, great game. Except that it has a very clunky combat system. And I honestly think you could use the Lion and Dragon combat system, magic system, and just use that for the resolution of those mechanics for Pendragon. Pendragon also has a great system of traits and passions, which help guide your character's actions. It would be very easy to kind of import those into the Lion and Dragon system, where you're rolling a die 20 and always wanting to roll high. In Pendragon, you have this thing sometimes where you want to roll low. It's kind of counterintuitive. Very, very easy to overcome. These roles, like the traits roll that you would make in Pendragon, let's say you have a trait of forgiving at 15 and vengeful at 5, and occasionally you'll need to test whether you're forgiving that day or vengeful. It always adds up to 20, by the way, which is key. And normally, as I said, in the Pendragon game, you'd want to roll under that to succeed. You could easily rule that those scores are actually modifiers to a die 20 roll, and then your target number is always 20. Same thing with passions. I have a passionate hatred, of, the Normans or whatever. And it's based the same way. It's a score, 14. In the Pendragon game, you want to roll under it. Here, it's just a modifier, and your target number is always 20. Easy peasy. So yeah, that is one application that I would seriously consider using Lion and Dragon for, because the Pendragon combat system, I always dreaded doing combat between multiple opponents. It got very clunky very quick, and it was not a good experience. I couldn't even imagine trying to do like a mass combat system, but with something familiar, like the OGL combat of Lion and Dragon, be a piece of cake. You can concentrate on the important stuff in the game. All right, so I'm going to let you guys go for the day. I hope you really do consider Lion and Dragon, even if it's just to support someone who doesn't hate you. Wizards of the Coast, if you are a Republican, if you are a centrist, Even if you're an old school liberal who just believes in free speech, these people do not like you. They listen to the weirdos on Twitter. That is their fan base. That is the way they're going. You could do worse than buying Lion and Dragon or some of the other OSR stuff. So that'll do it. I want to wish you a great rest of the day. And until we talk again, we will catch you on the flip side. Goodbye.